So what did you guys end up thinking about BioShock Infinite? Like, a full year later almost.
Yeah, came out in March.
Yeah, I think so. February or March.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about it?
We all liked it.
Yeah, we liked the game.
Right.
To various degrees, I think.
Yeah, I don't think I liked it as much as you.
Probably not.
But I did like it. And I think we all sort of agree in this, I feel like I'm borrowing a pretty common sentiment by saying this, but we all agree that it was fun and exciting to be playing it at launch and to be talking about it and to have everyone talking about it and to have basically all of sort of gaming kind taking an opinion on this game, on this thing. And that's, whatever side you're on, if you think BioShock Infinite sucked and was terrible and was trite nonsense, or you think it was the best game of the year, you have to admit it's good for games when people talk that much about the medium, what it can do, what it's doing wrong, what it's doing right.
It was such a cool moment in games. Like, there were people who loved Infinite, there were people who hated Infinite, there were people who were frustrated with it. Everybody was talking about it, though. And to have that level of conversation going on in small conversations in smaller communities that branched out into larger communities, everybody was talking about the ending and whether it was worth the hype or worth the wait.
Yeah, it was a cultural event in gaming,
and that was so cool to see. Like, we don't have that as often as I think we should in this industry.
I feel like the last time was Mass Effect 3. But that conversation was much more limited in scope.
Right.
There was a lot of arguing about the ending, and there was a lot of arguing about the ending of BioShock Infinite. Yeah. But there was also a lot of, really great editorial written about, the dissonance between the gameplay and the story. What do we think of Elizabeth as a character? Like, is this a good character? Is she does she have depth? What do we think of Booker? It was, all aspects of games. The interactivity, the storytelling got discussed.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
I think in terms of, execution of the storytelling and the world itself, one of the things that let me down were the tears. I mean, they're sort of very simply implemented. I mean, these sort of dimensional tears that exist in the environment that you can kind of get glimpses of and get a sense of, this is the greater, world and dimensions in which this story is set, but never really properly stepped into one of those. And that seemed like such a huge missed opportunity.
Or when you did, it felt like it was incredibly scripted, and that it was ironically predestined that you were going to do that.
There was never a choice.
Yeah, from a gameplay perspective.
But
from a gameplay perspective, it would have been cool to have those tears feel more integral to the actual combat, right? Where instead of just here are some options if you need them, but you can probably get through this arena by shooting things.
Well, you could see hints of that in very early trailers for BioShock Infinite. I mean, we all know how the game was delayed and they worked on it a bunch, but I think a E3 2010 trailer or 11 maybe shows for example, it was a mechanic at one time where using the tears to bring stuff into the environment would exhaust Elizabeth. Like, she would somehow be drained of some energy or something. You'd have to be really careful about how what you chose to bring in, rather than, okay, I want health. Okay, I want this sentry robot. I want, you're just alternating between them.
And at some point that got dropped.
Yeah, changed.
And they seem more important, the tears, story-wise too. But I respect Irrational for how much they apparently edited out of that game. They've said it's a lot. I respect them for paring down and not
grafting on.
Yeah, but I think maybe they might have edited out some stuff that would have helped the game.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't come close to replicating the feeling I had playing the original BioShock. It doesn't touch it for me. I mean, what's critically missing for me there is having a silent protagonist in that game was the perfect fit in the original BioShock. And the relationship you have with Andrew Ryan, where he's sort of unreliably a source for a lot of primary information about what's going on around you, and you're having to rely on Atlas and things like that. Obviously, you're being manipulated. That was such an interesting hook. And having Elizabeth as a character, you're talking, the Lutesses are conveying a lot of important plot information.
Lutesses are cool.
Through the audio diaries.
I like them. The Lutesses were pretty cool.
I like them, but because of the complexity of the plot, they had to necessarily, and I can't think of a more elegant way to do this other than the tears actually, they would have utilized those properly, in my opinion. A lot of important plot information was in those audio diaries. Yeah. Kind of buried and off to the side.
And whereas in BioShock, the sort of audio stuff I liked a lot as you're looking through artifacts, relics of things that happened, and they're all placed there for a reason. They were definitely just expository in Infinite. Like there was
world setting.
There's this big, lively world around you, at least at the beginning.
Yeah. That
could have been probably used better. I don't know how. Again, like you, I'm not saying I'm.
It's hard to. It's a hard problem to actually fix, but there definitely is like a disconnect between the feeling of being in Rapture and kind of exploring this world that has already totally fallen apart, and then kind of being there for Columbia. I get all that. Totally makes sense to me. I loved BioShock Infinite though. I absolutely loved it, and like it was such a gorgeous world, especially at the beginning, to see everything come together. Yeah. The moment you get into Columbia in the first place was unbelievable. I liked the combat. I feel like the combat probably stands up a little better on its own in that Clash of the Clouds DLC, because there really did feel like there was tension between the narrative aspects of the game and the actual combat part of the game, and a lot of times those two things didn't feel like they mixed very well, but I didn't care because it was so good.
I felt the same way. I thought the criticism of that was a little bit overblown.
Yeah.
A little bit too focused on like, well, why does this game have combat at all when it's such like a great, artistic, narratively sound game, narratively interesting game.
But if it didn't have combat, you wouldn't have fought the handyman.
Yeah, I mean, those were some of the best fights in the game. I think maybe the best fights in the game.
Yeah.
I mean, they really we made a video encouraging people to play on hard difficulty, which I think is sort of the right setting for it.
Everyone I talked to who didn't, and I did, had a very different experience with it, and said like it was just too easy to kind of float through. But hard was a bit hard.
Yeah, I mean at that level, it really emphasizes the spontaneity, I think, of decision making, and your resources are kind of stretched in terms of vigors and things like that, and you really have to think on the fly and leap between the skylines to survive, and you're throwing down vigors just to scrape by, basically. And it's a really fun feeling.
And again, I loved talking to everyone about the ending and about that experience. Like it's the only game I think that I played through, like not in one sitting, but certainly in like one chunk, like a weekend or like a couple of days, and just afterwards had to talk to everyone about the experience. And not everyone was positive on it, but that conversation was so fantastic to have.
I really enjoyed the ending and the conversation. My criticism of it is that where BioShock ended, sort of with an emotional and thematic hit that kind of, you lose a little bit of breath, BioShock Infinite got cold at the end for me and became a very mechanical time travel, multi-dimensional story that I don't want to spoil anything. We can keep talking about this game all year.
I thought it was hugely emotional. And maybe it's the problem where like you get out of it what you put into it, but like I was committed to those characters.
I thought it was pretty dense in terms of it was very expository and explaining all the things that it had set up by necessity. I mean, that's just the nature of the complex story that Irrational told, but
I'm not saying it wasn't
like a singular twist that was interesting.
I actually felt the original BioShock was less emotional.
Really?
Yeah, because
you feel betrayed though, don't you? Like, isn't that sort of, you feel deceived, and that's an interesting feeling. Games don't make me feel that very often.
I didn't really feel, not compared to like the way I felt in like System Shock 2. That's when I felt deceived, when I felt like the game had led me to something like that. The twist in BioShock, like, that's fine, it happens in the middle of the game, but by the end I was just like, well, I'm glad that the gold guy is dead, let's move on, right? Whereas
I'm not saying the actual ending of BioShock was the best. We all know it's not the best ending in game history. But I mean, the progression of the story and stuff, that I feel like there's this build-up in Infinite, build-up, and you get to the last few scenes, and then it's just like, all the gears have to click into the place now, so that later, when you go talk to your friends, you can go, oh, and remember when the Lutessa said this, and then remember what they were saying is, and you can go through and mechanically pick apart this very interesting, very well-crafted story, but it had less of a sort of impact on me from a thematic perspective.
I teared up. I'm not, you know what? Screw it. I teared up. I don't care. Judge all you want. But I was really into it. And then going back and then meeting the Lutesses again in the rowboat and seeing how everything came together, like that part that felt
That is super
mechanical for
fun.
you was really cool for me. So
Mechanical, but really fun.
that's
Because I love picking apart stuff. I watch Primer once a year just so I can
Oh man.
ruin my brain.
This right here is what I think is so great about BioShock Infinite, right? The polarizing effect. Like
totally.
even the three of us who all say that we enjoyed the game have all of these bits that we can talk about.
Played it nearly a year ago and still can't stop.
Yeah. And we're still talking about it, and we still have these, slightly divergent opinions where that generates discussion. Like that never happens.
Yeah, can't say that about every game. Dark
Right.
Souls.
You can totally say it about Dark Souls, but anyway.